Hey Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot to me. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. If you don't know what to comment, it's simple. Just put a robot emoji. It helps me out with the algorithm tremendously. So somebody asked me a question today. They actually texted me. Anybody can do this too. It's 949-415-6256. So here's what they said, okay? They said, I have an MD, not completed board certifications. I've been working as a CRC for 9 months. So I'm assuming it's somebody who is not licensed to practice in the US, but they're an MD by education, whether international medical graduate or maybe even in the US, but just not licensed yet. So I have completed my first interview at a major CRO, and I'm called back for the second 1 hour long video with the hiring managers on soon. Okay, I can't give away too much about this person, right? But they've been working as a coordinator for 9 months, and there are 3 positions they're looking to fill, and this person's really hoping they can get this position at this major CRO. So behavioral situational questions, sample answers, and other tricky must-know information you can give me. So this is tough because this could be like a 3, 4, 5 hour video. This could be like an all day. This could be like this is like CRC Academy, CRA Academy internship right here. So here's the thing. You've been a CRC, a clinical research coordinator, for 9 months. What does that mean? That means that the employer, and by the way, you passed your first hour-long interview, so that's a great sign. So take a little bit of that pressure off. Now you're getting to the second level, higher level people, the bosses, right? Eventually you get to the third and final level, Bowser, if you play Mario Brothers. But look, I'm kidding. Don't worry too much. Just, you're an MD. Number 1, how many people can actually say that? Number 2, you're an MD that's not going to pursue, at least in the short term, not going to be pursuing working as a clinician. So this company is going to be blessed to have you. That's number 2. And number 3, you have almost a year of experience as a study coordinator. So the behavioral stuff they're going to ask you is all about because they know you have clinical knowledge, but they might ask you some stuff about that, depending if they're short-staffed on, and this is where it's hard for me to predict, if they're short-staffed in a certain therapeutic indication, they might ask you, like, let's say it's breast cancer, they might ask you, like, what do you know about ER, PR, HER2, and the new one, if you watch my interview with Dr. Al-Jazirali, androgen receptor, which is a new thing in research that they're looking at breast cancer. They might ask you stuff like that because you're an MD. They might want to assess your knowledge for particular therapeutic indications to see where they can put you. But most of the stuff they're going to ask you is from your study coordinating career, from your study coordinating experiences. So they're going to ask you, how did you handle informed consent? Were you the one doing informed consents at your place of work? How did you work with the PI or the sub-Is to ensure subjects knew the informed consent and that the process of informed consent was followed properly? I'm not going to give you answers for these things because you can find all these answers on my videos, but I'm going to give you like some of the questions that I would ask you if I were the hiring manager at this company. Number 3, how did you interact with CRAs? How did you work with them to meet deadlines? Did you ever have a database lock where you as the coordinator had to work with the CRA to make sure queries were answered and all data was entered in the EDC prior to deadlines? How did you meet deadlines? What were those are stressful times. So what were some of the challenges that you had during those stressful times, and how did you overcome that? That's database lock. How did you work to ensure that adverse events and serious adverse events at your site were documented properly? What were the outcomes of those AEs? What were the outcomes of those SAEs? And by the way, if they don't ask you any of these things, just bring them up. So ICF, database locks, and SAEs and AEs are super important. Another thing is like startup regulatory and regulatory maintenance. Were you responsible for this at your site? This is why I say, if you work at a smaller site, the better. If you work at a big academic medical center, these things are streamlined. Regulatory is done by different people than clinical stuff. If you work at a smaller site, you're doing all of it. So did you work with regulatory? Tell us how you got the startup regulatory done in a timely manner. And what they're looking for here are like specific examples, like when it comes to startup regulatory, or like I mentioned before, the SAEs or the AEs, they want specific examples. So it's situation, task, action, and response. That's kind of what they're looking for. So if you know that the STAR method, situation, task, action, response, you can either bring those up, paint the picture of the situation and task, and then what was your action and response, or they're going to paint the picture. Were you ever in a situation? So you got to be prepared for both. They might paint the situation and task, and you need to do the action and response, or you might be given the opportunity, open-ended question, to bring up the situation, task, and then bring up the action and the response. So that's startup regulatory is another one. Regulatory maintenance is another one. How did you ensure that the protocol amendments and all the trainings were being done properly at your site? How did you ensure that the latest version of the informed consent was done? Did you create source documents at your site? They might ask you a little bit about patient recruitment, but if they're hiring for like a CRA, they may probably not. They're going to focus more on the operational stuff. If they're hiring you, this is another thing, I don't know what they're hiring you for. If they're hiring you for an in-house CRA, it's going to be a lot of startup regulatory. How did you keep documents organized? What was your system like to keep patients' visits coming or documents streamlined? How did you work on delegation of authorities? Did you, as the coordinator, how did you keep the people that are responsible for certain tasks that they're delegated doing what they were supposed to do? How did you keep track of their trainings? How did you keep track of when they need to do it? So timelines. It depends on the position that they're hiring for. It's going to be helpful to know what aspect of CRC experience is going to be beneficial to them and most immediately transferable. So that's the good thing about being a clinical research coordinator, is you're such a generalist. You have a wide variety of skill set that can actually be applied to CRO at multiple positions, obviously CRA, but also in-house CRA, study startup specialist, trial master file specialist, even though those are getting definitely more and more specialized. So how did you follow up with action items? How did you resolve queries? How did you ensure protocol compliance? Did you ever look at your colleagues' work and do source data review to make sure they were compliant on the protocol? Did you ever have colleagues looking at your stuff and what were their results? How did you guys how were you cross-trained on other protocols from your colleagues and vice versa? How did you ensure PI oversight? What is PI oversight? How did you ensure patient safety? How did you manage the labs, the results, the EKGs that the PI is signing off on them? What are these? There's so many questions. We can make this a 4-hour video, but just deconstruct your day-to-day responsibilities as a CRC and think of all the different ways to apply it to a situational task, action, and response scenario interview style questions. And like I said, they might paint the picture, so you got to be familiar with. There's only 3 things you need to be familiar with. That's source, that's regulatory, and that's investigational product. We didn't even talk about that. How did you deal with temperature excursions? How did you deal with patient compliance with the investigational product? How did you deal with EDC when it comes to those things? With investigational product accountability, you have to match up the individual investigational product documents and logs with the actual medication itself, with the EDC, and with the master investigational product logs. So that's investigational product. So if you focus on those 3 things, source, regulatory, and investigational product, and you tie it into database locks and EDC and getting the data clean and organized, and teamwork and working with your colleagues, your PI, and your CRAs, and maybe patients a little bit, those are the bulk of the questions. And so you can plug and play different variations of those questions in a situation, task, action, and response method. So good luck. Let me know how it goes. I have plenty of videos on each individual topic here when you need to go study, like your response. Take care.